Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Jesse Harper. I'm the superintendent of schools for Arkport, and this is the second of 3 town hall meetings that I will be putting on. We had an in-person meeting last week. We have this online meeting this week, and then we have another meeting next week, next Thursday, in person as well. And so these are opportunities for the community to ask questions. This really is an open forum for anybody that's joining us to ask questions about this year's budget. We will have the annual budget hearing on May 14th. That is our annual budget meeting, and that's a week prior to the budget vote. But this is anyone's opportunity to ask questions, learn more about this year's budget. How this works is that if you are on Facebook or YouTube, any comment you put on the video that you're watching, I will be able to see. So if you have questions, put them in the comments. Please, we're talking budget. I don't want anybody that's watching tonight to leave with any questions unanswered. So if you have a question, post it. I will be monitoring. I might not be able to get to it right away. And there is a lag in the video as well, but put them in there. And before the end of the presentation tonight, I will go back and look at the comments and answer any questions that I can. So we're going to go ahead and get started. To kind of set the tone for this year's budget, Arkport is in a very good position this year. We are receiving approximately 4% increase in our state aid. We are the second highest increase percentage-wise in our BOCES out of 21 districts. So we are in a good position, and the plan we have put together for the last 3 years regarding the federal COVID aid is coming together. So we are not looking at dropping any programs or positions. And there's a lot of talk. This is a tough budget year for a lot of districts due to changes in state aid. But we are not in that position at Arkport. This is a solid budget year for us. We're maintaining or increasing programs, and we're doing that with a reasonable tax increase. So it's a positive year for our community. That's kind of setting the stage for what we're going to be talking about. And I know that's slightly different than last year. Last year we cut 3 positions, but we're not in that position this year. So I'm going to go ahead and get started. And like I said, if you have questions, put them in the comment section of the video you're watching on Facebook or YouTube, and they will pop up for me to see, and I will make sure that I address any questions that you may have. So to start, here is what the overall budget looks like. We will go through each category and talk about the changes that are being made in those categories. Employee benefits, you'll see, and instruction are our biggest increases. We've really tried to manage increases outside of instruction. So if changes had to be made to this budget, the Board of Education was very clear that they wanted to make sure that those changes didn't affect students to the greatest possible extent. So you can see instruction has gone up by $233,000. Employee benefits is our largest increase at $426,000. I'll get into a little more detail as we go through the presentation about why those increases. But overall, we have a 5.19 increase, or a $715,000 increase from last year to this year. And those are being driven primarily by instruction and employee benefits. Really, the 2 biggest things that the board and administration had to think about this year were the sunsetting of ARP and ESSER funds. These are the federal COVID-19 relief funds that we received for the last 3 years. So this is our third year. We get a tiny bit of revenue in next year. It's around $17,000. But this graph, when I said there were two big things, it was number one, trying to maintain programs with a reasonable tax increase, but also how do we address the drop in COVID aid? So this graph shows you we used approximately $547,000 this year of ARP and ESSER funds, that COVID pandemic funding. And what has occurred over the last 3 years, we've increased our supports and our offerings for our students. And on the right-hand side, you can see some of those things. It's our after-school enrichment and summer camp, counseling, behavior specialists, curriculum work. And we have always been thinking about, so we've had funding for 3 years. We get a little bit next year in the fourth. Even from the very beginning, we had been planning on what happens at the end of this money. And we have been saving money for the last 3 years, moving it forward to have available this year or next year to help offset some of those costs. So here we can see we have about $547,000 that we're using this year. We move half of that over to the budget. So in our current budget, we are covering half of those expenses. And we are using money we have saved over the last couple of years to cover the other half. So we are maintaining programs. And the plan is year after year is to increase the amount covered by the budget and decrease the amount we have to support with money saved so we can maintain these programs. And this was put into place 3 years ago. And I'm proud to say that the plan is working. We are maintaining programs and we're using money that we have saved over the last 3 years to do that. For anybody that's joined us, we're just talking about kind of the parameters of this year's budget. But I'll also remind you, if you're viewing, you can ask any question you would like regarding the budget. You just put the comments into Facebook or YouTube where you're watching, and they'll pop up, and then I can address them. So we are maintaining the programs that have benefited our students, and we're doing it in a fiscally responsible way. So that was one of the big pieces of this year's budget. Revenues. What is changing with the revenues that we are bringing in for the school year? 3 ones that I wanted to highlight. What I'm going to do over the next couple of slides is just highlight the big changes. We have a positive school year, and I want people to understand when they look at the budget what some of those changes are and the explanation behind them. So the board has approved a tentative budget that has a 2% increase. So you can see we're going to increase the real property taxes. Other tax items, that is the money that I had said we have been saving over the last couple of years. We're applying that to next year's budget. And then our state sources are increasing. So the 4 big things on that for the real property, for the revenue, property tax increases is approximately $75,000. The other tax items, we're increasing our appropriated fund balance to cover the cost of our programs. State sources, we have a good increase in foundation aid. And that $200,000, like I said, we were one of the only districts in our area. We were one of the highest districts in our area for state increase. And I want to pause there and give credit due for why are we receiving that increase? It really goes to our faculty and staff, our students, and also our community. You have supported this district, and it really comes down to our enrollment has been stable. Now, some people will remember a time when Arkport had 700 students. Obviously, we have dropped down. We are 475, but we actually dipped down to close to 400 students at one time. And over the last 5 or 6 years, our enrollment has slowly increased, and now we're maintaining right around 475. students. And that's really why our state aid has increased. Other districts have continued to drop, and those dropping number of students has affected their state aid. And we also had a slight increase in federal sources, rural schools grant. We had an increase of $8,000. So those are the big changes in revenues. Now we move on to expenses. A lot of the things that will show up, our newsletter will be coming out after our town hall meeting or our budget meeting on the 14th. And there are increases and decreases regarding every one of our budget categories. Some of these changes are just natural for the cycle. One budget increases, another decreases within it, but I wanted to highlight some of these changes. We had a question come through from Angela Dickinson, so let me bring that up. If we merge with Canastariga, will that help? Absolutely, but that question has been on pause for a couple of years since the last merger vote, where the Arkport community voted to approve it 2 times, and the Canastariga community voted it down in the second round. From my position and Mr. Groff's position, it was all about bettering our students' education. But that is not a decision that one district can make by themselves. So while that would help, it is not really an option that we have available to us right now. So the big changes for general support, and I went through with the faculty and staff and kind of broke these similar things down, because there looks like there's some big changes, but there's usually a simple explanation behind that. Business administration didn't go up. It went up, but that was a transfer of costs from one budget area that was in transportation to general support. Public information is going down. One of the ways that the district saved money to help support instruction was decreasing the number of programs that we're buying through BOCES. BOCES is the Board of Cooperative Education Services. So to save positions, to continue those direct supports, we decreased Thought Exchange is one example I gave. Other things that are not as forward-focused or student-focused as instructional positions or other programs. Maintenance is going up a little bit, but that's just our purchase of our pickup truck. We have a cycle. And just like everybody else, we're seeing increases in our insurance premiums, just like everybody is seeing in their home budgets. And that increase is about 10%. Moving on to instruction, obviously this is the largest portion of our budget. About 65% of our budget goes to instruction. These are the things that are most directly influencing our students' education. There's lots of ups and downs in this, in the general budget. I kind of try to point out that the ups are in red, the downs are in green, but that doesn't mean that we're losing positions or things are going away. And so I highlight, again, some of the major changes. Overall, the instructional budget, like I showed in the first slide, is up $220,000. That is because we are taking positions or programs that have been supported with the ESSER and ARP funds, the federal funding, and moving them to the regular budget. So that includes teaching, guidance, social work, co-curricular activities. Our after-school program and summer program have been funded with federal funds. And what we have done in that case, even though it's coming over to the budget, we've also found ways to save money through using BOCES shared services. So that's going to be an increase. Supervision, there's an increase there, but that is because we are showing salaries that are covered by BOCES coasters. It's a large increase, but it is just showing what we have been paying. Our SPED programs, That's a big drop when you look at the budget, around $200,000. But our SPED programs, that is not a decrease in services. That all really represents a change in SPED programs. We have students that have been going to programs outside the district that we're bringing them back, and that can be a big savings, and that's why that line dropped. Speech, it shows a drop. We are still offering speech. We've just shifted part of that salary to a grant, a yearly grant. This is not a grant that's going to go away, so that represents a drop. Our occupational education, or CTE programs, shows a decrease, but that is, again, we are fully supporting our CTE programs and our students who choose to go to both these programs. We're still continuing with our advanced CTE program, which allows students to possibly get multiple certifications. The decrease of around $60,000 just represents we had a couple really big classes go through BOCES, 40, 45 students. Now we're dropping down to an average of more around 36, 37 students. So it's not a drop in what we're offering, just a drop in enrollment, which is okay. And then athletics increases because we are showing real costs. And athletics is one of the areas that, due to contracts with coach, referees, and other things, we don't have a lot of control, and those costs have gone up pretty dramatically in the last couple of years. So we're reflecting our true costs. So we've gone through revenue, we've gone through general support, we've gone through instruction. I'll pause here and just remind anybody that's joined us in the last couple of minutes that please, if you have questions, put them in the comment section of the videos you're watching, and I will get to them as soon as possible. Also, if you joined us late, this video will be available on Facebook and YouTube. And also, please share it with anybody that wasn't able to come tonight. But they will continue to be available on Facebook and YouTube as well. Next up, we have transportation. Pretty straightforward. There is a pretty sizable decrease of $37,000. And the reasoning behind that is we have two options for our buses. We can purchase them outright, or we can lease them. And for the last 4 years, we have been leasing buses. We've been taking advantage of the low interest rates. But over the last 2 years, they've increased. And we decided this year that the interest rates are gone high enough that we are going to switch back and buy our 2 school buses next year instead of leasing them. So that decrease is just representative of not having that lease payment in our budget. So we're still purchasing buses, but every year we take a look at what is the best way to secure new transportation, whether that's buying or leasing. So we're going to buy them this year. If interest rates drop in the future, we'll come back to leasing. And the buying of the school buses is funded by one of our reserve accounts. We have a reserve for transportation, and so that is funded. And the way we fund reserves is when we have a surplus at the end of the school year because we didn't spend, expenses came in lower, or revenues came in higher, we can put those in reserve accounts. So the purchasing of the 2 school buses, which will be, I think the wording of our proposition is not to exceed $325,000 or so, that will be at no increase for the taxpayers because that is money that the district has set aside over the last couple of years to fund that. So that is your taxpayer money, but those reserves allow us to make purchases and not hit the taxpayers all at once for a major purchase such as school buses. Next up, employee benefits. This is the, if you look back at my presentations for the last 7 or 8 years, it is always true that health insurance is the major driver of our budgets. So there's 2 things I highlight here. State retirement. We have 2 different retirement systems. We have the teacher retirement and the employee retirement system. So our state retirement, our employee retirement is going up by it's going from 13.1% in contribution. The district makes that contribution to 15.2. So that's that driver. But that huge increase of around $400,000 is driven by our healthcare plan. And we're in a consortium with about seven districts. The premiums that our health plan is priced at have gone up 20%. And so that is the number one driver of our budget. And that has been the same way for the last 8 years, but that was a very large increase for this school year. Yvonne Oliver has a question. How long do we keep the buses? So when we lease our buses, we have them for 5 years. And that's a good cycle. It's a good cycle when we lease because our warranties last 5 years. So a lot of the work can be covered. We have been purchasing our handicap accessible buses. We usually keep those 6 or 7 years, and we keep them longer just because they have a lower usage rate. For our purchased buses, we're still trying to stick to the 5-6 years. And this is something that the district has been really good at, even prior to me, of making sure we trade in our equipment while it's in good shape and we can get top dollar for those trade-ins. So leases are always 5 years, and we're usually trying to keep the other buses that we purchase, we're trying to trade those in usually about 7 years. Next up, we have debt service. I'm not highlighting too much. We have an increase of around $60,000 that we were aware of. It's offset with state aid. This is usually pretty standard and not much change here. These are always built off of the borrowing that we do for the building projects. And so this is pretty standard, no surprises here. So those are our budget categories. The next thing that I want to bring up is the tax rates for next year. These are all projected based on the proposed budget. The proposed budget has around a 2% increase for and a 2% increase in the tax levy. And so these are our most up-to-date figures regarding the impact of that 2% on all of our townships. So our school tax base is comprised of parts of Almond, parts of Birdsall, parts of Burns. We do have a small section of Hornell within our district, and that is centered around the airport. We have part of Dansville, South Dansville, Fremont, and then we have a section of Hornellsville and the village of Arkport. One of the toughest things to explain is that we set the tax levy, and that's all the district does. That's all the Board of Education does. So our tax levy is set, and then based on the assessment values in your township and the state saying you are 100% at your assessed value or you're underassessed, they change your full value in your township of your home with an equalization rate. So our average tax rate is projected to be around $20.30. That's the average. That doesn't mean that each township will have the same tax rate. That is dictated by the equalization rate set by the state. The closer you are to 100, the closer you will be to the average. So the district, the Board of Education sets the tax levy. Your tax rate is more accurately affected by your assessment value and the New York State equalization rate. With all of that said, what we're looking at for the projected tax impact on $100,000 assessed home value. We use, most of the time districts use $100,000 because it's easy to find that factor based on your homes assessed value, your land assessed value. For Arkport, that is almost exactly what the average home land assessed value is. I think our average assessed value is right around $95,000. So $100,000 assessed home value really represents the average for the district. And with a 2% increase, what we're looking at is a home valued at $100,000 and no star exemption will see an increase of $34.83 next year in their tax bill. Basic star, it'll be an increase of $19.85, and enhanced star, it'll be $2.42. Again, these are the average tax rates. Depending on your equalization rate in your township, that could be higher or lower, but this is a good idea of what the average home value within the district, the increased will be. And with that, that is the end of the presentation. For those who've just joined us, feel free to pop any questions you have into the chat or into the comments section. I can answer those, but I'll go back to where I started with, for those who joined us late. This is a good budget year for Arkport. There's lots of news out there about districts struggling, losing state aid, losing ESSER and ARP funds. Number one, we're seeing an increase in state aid, and that is due to our steady enrollment. And we've had a plan in place for around 3 years to address when we lose that federal COVID aid. And so this is a positive year for Arkport, where there aren't very many changes. The board and the administration is trying to keep tax rates fairly stable at 2%. So this is all in context of when you hear other districts talking about going out with 4, 5, 6% tax increase, then that's not our situation. So this is a pretty straightforward budget presentation because it's a pretty straightforward budget for Arkport. Have another question coming in from Angela Dickinson. Can we start doing DOE meetings like this? That is a discussion to have with the Board of Education. They are the board's meetings. They are public to witness their business. And so that would be something that if you are interested in having meetings streamed, that's a question that would have to go to the Board of Education. I realize it's spring break for our school. Not that everybody has spring break from their jobs, but I do appreciate everyone joining us tonight. It's a good thing to see participation even while we're on break. So this is the second town hall meeting. We do have another town hall meeting coming up next Thursday, which is, or I believe it's the 9th. It's the 2nd or the 9th, but it's posted on our Facebook page and our website. So this is just another opportunity. This recording will be up for anybody that wants to look at it, or you can share. But with that, I'll stick around for a couple minutes just to see if there's any questions coming in. But if not, thank you for joining us, and I hope you have a great rest of the night.